At the peak of his career, Mike Tyson was called the most dangerous man in the world. And no wonder, because in the ring, this guy was like a devastating hurricane. He instantly accelerated to peak speeds and destroyed his opponents with his lightning-fast punches. Every fight Mike had turned into a real show, and his spectacular knockouts caused admiration and awe for his talent. Without batting an eye, Tyson sent the top heavyweights of his era to the canvas and watched them fall helplessly at his feet. But before becoming Iron Mike, Tyson had to pass many tests. How did a little thief from Brooklyn grow up to become the best knockout artist in the world, with the highest paydays in boxing history? Mike Tyson's childhood was not easy. Born in June 1966 in New York City, he grew up in the city's most criminal neighborhood. Mike's mother, Lorna Mae Smith, was a prostitute, and he considered his father to be his mother's pimp. The environment in which Mike grew up could not but influence him. Already at the age of 10, he was a member of a street gang, engaged in petty theft, and often ended up in various correctional facilities for juvenile delinquents. It was in one of them that he first met Muhammad Ali, who came to talk to troubled teenagers. It was after this meeting that Mike decided to become a boxer. At the age of 12, he entered the Tryon School, a special institution for juvenile delinquents in upstate New York. It was there that he met his first trainer, Bobby Stewart, who was once the U.S. light heavyweight champion. Stewart agreed to train Mike, and 2 years later, Tyson almost beat his teacher during a sparring session. Then Stewart brought Mike to trainer and manager, Cus D'Amato. Cus was deeply impressed by Mike's abilities and took him under his wing. Later, when Tyson's mother died, Cus and his wife adopted his best student. From that moment on, it was Cus that Tyson called his real father. After all, D'Amato did more for him than anyone else. He helped him develop his own style of boxing, and in just a few years became the best heavyweight on the planet. D'Amato assembled a team of professionals around Mike, selected the best sparring partners for him, and obtained a video library of boxing matches, from which Tyson learned a lot. Before his debut on the big ring, Mike spent 3 years in the amateur ranks and won a silver medal at the Youth Olympic Games. When he turned 18, Cus D'Amato decided that it was time for him to go on a big voyage. Tyson entered the professional arena and instantly became a world star. Mike's lightning knockouts and unique aggressive style made him a real phenomenon in the boxing world. But enough talk. It's time to see the best knockouts of Iron Mike. Are you ready? One of Mike Tyson's most memorable early fights was his fight with the son of the famous Joe Frazier Marvis. This fight took place in July 1986. At that time, Tyson was considered a kind of phenomenon in the boxing world, who became a top heavyweight in just 1 year and managed to score 23 knockouts in the blink of an eye. Marvis Frazier was almost the only worthy opponent for Iron Mike. During his career in big boxing, he defeated Joe Bugner, Jose Revolta, James Smith, and a number of other top heavyweights, suffering only one defeat against Larry Holmes. However, unlike Marvis, Tyson was a 100% knockout artist and did not like to delay the final. With the sound of the gong, he swiftly attacked his opponent and pressed him against the ropes, delivering blow after blow. Frazier tried to move from the line of attack and respond to Tyson. Less than half a minute into the fight, Mike drove the descendant of the great Joe Frazier into a deadlock. That's when Mike unleashed his favorite combination of left hook and right uppercut, and Marvis began to settle on the canvas. But Tyson didn't stop until his opponent lost consciousness. This knockout at 30 seconds of the fight was the fastest victory for Tyson in his career. The fight with Trevor Berbick, which took place in November 1986, definitely deserves a place in Mike Tyson's treasury of the best fights. 10 years older and much more experienced than Mike Berbick, he had just become the WBC champion in February and was considered one of the best heavyweights on the planet. In addition, he was known for being the last opponent of Muhammad Ali, defeating the legend by unanimous decision. However, 20-year-old Tyson had a hot temper and unshakable self-confidence. He was ready to knock the king off his pedestal Moreover, it was the first chance for Iron Mike to fight for the championship belt, and he was not going to miss it. Mike started the fight in his usual aggressive style. He quickly engaged his opponent in an open exchange of punches and began to impose his own rules of the game. But after a few well-placed strikes, Tyson Burbick closed in and clinched Mike more and more often, working mostly on defense. With 20 seconds left in the first round, Mike landed a powerful left hook that knocked Trevor to the other side of the ring. The champion miraculously managed to stay on his feet and last until the end of the round. Tyson broke into the second round with a lightning-fast right overhook. After taking a second pause, he continued his attack with several more versatile hooks and finished with a right hook, sending Burbick into a knockdown. The champion quickly recovered and got to his feet, but not for long. Less than 2 minutes later, the situation repeated itself. This time, a combination of a right uppercut and a charged left hook worked. Trevor grabbed onto his opponent, trying to stay on his feet, and a second later, he slowly slid to the ground. The champion was crushed and still couldn't believe that he had lost the belt during his first defense. But Iron Mike hit a huge jackpot that night. He became the youngest heavyweight champion in the history of boxing, and he did it just a year and a half after starting his professional career. The legendary Larry Holmes became one of Tyson's most famous victims. They met in the ring in January 1988. At that time, Tyson already had 3 championship belts according to the WBC, WBA, and IBF versions, and was once again defending his title as the best heavyweight on the planet. Larry was a true boxing veteran, not only twice as old, but also twice as experienced as Mike. Having lost his last 2 fights by decision, he had already announced his retirement. However, the prospect of fighting for 3 belts at once made him return to the professional ring. Before this fight, Tyson's opponent launched a whole smear campaign against him. He insulted the champion at a press conference and told journalists that he would end up in jail. But this only angered Iron Mike. When the rivals finally got into the ring, Larry felt the champion's wrath to the fullest. Tyson dominated from the very first seconds of the fight, confusing Holmes with his swift attacks. The champion was chasing his opponent around the ring like a boy, and the latter was only defending himself, trying to protect himself from Mike's powerful punches. In the second segment, Tyson continued his offensive. He got to Holmes' jaw, even though there was a significant difference in height. The veteran's long arms didn't help either, as he tried to keep Mike at an inconvenient distance for the attack. The champion found ways to close the distance and shoot his opponent with quick combinations of hooks and uppercuts. And at the end of the round, Mike pushed Larry to the ropes, putting a double dose of aggression into each of his punches. The third round did not change Tyson's plans. He chased his victim all over the ring. It seemed Larry was already openly afraid of the young and hot Mike, and for good reason. After the next break, Larry surprisingly got bolder and began to brazenly shoot Mike with long-range jabs. And so Tyson decided that the time had come. He waited for the right moment and unleashed a lightning-fast combination of left uppercut and right hook that instantly put Larry on the canvas. Holmes got up, trying to realize what had happened, but another right hook set him down for the second time. Perhaps Larry shouldn't have gotten up for the second time, because he was waiting for another minute of merciless beating and the final knockout. Mike defeated the ring legend, inflicting his first knockout defeat and taking revenge for all the insults. One of the best heavyweights in the United Kingdom, Frank Bruno, fell under the iron fist of Tyson in February 1989. Mike was just getting a divorce from his first wife, actress Robin Givens, and was unable to fully prepare for the fight. But his innate talent and his skills had developed over the years came to the rescue. As soon as the fighters entered the ring, Mike just attacked Frank. In the first 10 seconds of the fight, he managed to land a dozen accurate punches and send his opponent into a knockdown. But Frank drew the right conclusions from this episode and managed to adapt to Mike's style. He began attacking Tyson with close-range punches, constantly entering the clinch, and at the end of the first round, he looked quite convincing. Bruno tried his best to restrain his opponent's fierce aggression, but in the last seconds of the second round, Mike finally pinned him against the ropes, and the Briton had to withstand a hail of powerful punches. The third and fourth rounds were quite stiff. Mike tried to attack, but after each of his punches or combinations of punches, Frank entered the clinch. However, sooner or later, Tyson had to explode. It always happened, and this fight was no exception. A minute before the end of the fifth round, Mike finally broke through his opponent's defense and began to land blow after blow. Powerful hooks and uppercuts made Frank flinch every time. He moved around and tried to tie Tyson's arms in a clinch, but only got a few seconds of respite, and it all started again. 10 seconds before the end of the round, Bruno, who was clamped against the ropes, was barely conscious, and the champion continued to beat the spirit out of him. Only then did Bruno's corner throw in the towel. It was unavoidable that this ending would happen as Iron Mike entered the ring. Nevertheless, Frank Bruno has forever gone down in boxing history as the one who managed to resist Tyson for 5 rounds in a row. The fight with Buster Mathis Jr. was the second since Mike's return to big boxing after his prison sentence. But since his previous opponent Peter McNeely was disqualified, it was the fight with Mathis that was to open a new chapter in Tyson's career. 3 years behind bars did not pass without a trace for Mike, and when he resumed training, he decided to change his style a bit. So the opponents, who still remember Tyson from the 80s, were in for a surprise. Now, Mike attacked even more, and his punching power increased. Young Buster also had difficulties with Mike's new technique. When the bell sounded, he immediately rushed to his opponent, trying to attack him at close range. Buster pushed Mike to the ropes and landed numerous punches to the body. Tyson tied his opponent's hand and actively counterattacked. However, not all of his punches hit the target.
He said he was his. I bet Peter McNeely. Mike. We'll see what happens when he gets hit, though.
Only at the end of the round, Mike managed to catch Mathis's wave. He began to anticipate his opponent's attacks, and it became clear that things would only get more interesting. In the second round, Mike completely took control of the fight. He launched most of his attacks, stubbornly aiming for Buster's jaw with his signature uppercut. The third segment finally gave Tyson the opportunity to really prove himself. Another exchange of blows at close range, and Mike manages to hit Buster in the jaw. But he doesn't stop there. The second uppercut. The third. His right hand works like a hammer, taking away his opponent's last hope. Mathis falls down and doesn't have time, or simply doesn't dare, to get up until the referee counts to 10. This was the great comeback of Iron Mike. The fight with Francois Botha was a kind of comeback match for Tyson after the infamous incident with Evander Holyfield. Having bitten his opponent's ear, Mike lost his boxing license and did not enter the ring for almost 2 years. So the meeting with Botha in January 1999 was a chance for him to make a name for himself again and regain the favor of his fans. The South African Francois Botha managed to score 24 knockouts in his career and tried on the IBF World Championship belt. He was not inferior to his eminent rival either in experience or skill. However, Mike still underestimated Francois. Botha began to outplay Mike from the very first minutes. He hit accurate crosses and jabs, skillfully avoiding his opponent's counterattacks. Francois' successful attacks made Mike panic, and it all resulted in an unpleasant episode at the end of the first round, which bordered on a disqualification. Tyson clamped down on both his arm, and while holding him down, tried to throw punches with his other hand. The referee tried to separate the opponents, but Mike didn't even stop the bell. Even the corners rushed to stretch the fighters, because Tyson could have simply dislocated or even broken his opponent's arm. Mike came out for the second round furious. He immediately started attacking Francois with a series of jabs, but as soon as the opponent took him into the clinch, he started breaking his arm again. The former champion was losing control before our very eyes. So both began to escape from his aggressive attacks, using Holyfield tactics, that is. He worked mainly on counterattacks and counterattacks. Francois managed to hold out until the fifth round. However, with each round, it became more and more obvious that Tyson's patience would soon come to an end. In addition, Mike's impulsive and fast attacks tired Francois out. At the beginning of the fifth round, Tyson almost knocked his opponent down with his signature left hook. It was after this episode that both began to periodically miss punches and weaken his defense. And 10 seconds before the end of the round, the moment of truth finally came. Mike landed a quick jab and a jewel-like right hook that sealed the deal. Many sports critics claim that Tyson was no longer the same, but in every fight he proved the opposite. Of course, Mike was not the 20-year-old kid who could do anything, but he still had his trump cards. Incredibly fast attacks and the strongest punch in the division turned every fight of Iron Mike into a real show. He put on just such a show in January 2000 in a fight with Julius Francis. Francis was not as bright of a star as Mike. He stood out from the crowd only because of his victory over Danny Williams and defeat Vitaly Klitschko. Mike, on the other hand, was trying to ride the next wave of popularity and was looking for bright victories. Julius immediately went for the rapprochement and seemed to overestimate his capabilities. After all, Mike felt great at both medium and short distances, and very soon made his opponent dance to his tune. In the first 2 minutes of the fight, he kneaded his fists on Francis's liver and jaw. Julius tried to neutralize Mike by dragging him into a clinch, but it didn't always work. A minute before the end of the first round, Tyson knocked his opponent down for the first time with a right uppercut. And a second before the bell, he repeated his success, this time with a precisely calibrated jab. The second round was a real test for Julius. Mike pressured him with powerful punches, and in a matter of seconds, he sent Francis to the canvas again. Julius got up this time as well, but a few well-placed punches put him back down at the feet of the champion. It seemed like it would never end. After all, a few seconds later, Francis was knocked out for the third time in this round after a hard uppercut from Tyson. This fight was turning into a routine beating, and its outcome had long been obvious. Tyson proved once again that he is still unbeatable in the heavyweight division. Throughout his career, Mike Tyson knocked out about 50 of the best boxers of the He became the youngest world champion in 3 versions, the WBC, WBA, and IBF. The author of the largest number of quick knockouts and the owner of the most powerful punch. However, his personal problems have repeatedly hindered Big Mike's success. A difficult childhood left its mark on him. Tyson struggled with alcohol addiction and was repeatedly imprisoned. But every time, the great boxer won, and Mike returned to the ring. He proved to himself and everyone around him that circumstances cannot defeat you until you give up. And Tyson never gave up, knocking out his weaknesses as opponents in the ring. And in the end, he defeated them all. Subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and let us know in the comments which other legendary fights you would like to see, and we will make sure to review them.